So here is your masterpiece. And I will be honest, I kept trying to pick up the book and I'd be like on an airplane or children around or in between work. And it was like a rough start. And then I got this cold and I could really just get quiet and allow myself the time. And what a journey. What a journey. I mean, I'm really wanting to go through it so slowly. And I've been using the Placidus. Am I pronouncing it correctly? So I've really been getting into the Placidus, which everybody can find. You can just go to like astrology or Astro Cafe. Is that it? Cafe.
There are many sites, and what you want to do at this point when you're a novice or even into it a bit is you just put in your search engine, free natal chart. Free natal chart. You'll have a lot of choices. You enter in your birth time, your birthplace, and your birth date, and then you get a reading, and it's going to be Placidus. That's the tropical Placidus, the type of reading you'll get. And it's very important to know if you do not have your accurate birth time, just put in 12 p.m. and you'll still get enough of an accurate reading for most of your chart.
That's a nice hack. I highly recommend if you can take a weekend, if you can take a weekend away from children or don't have small children in your house, I mean, truly print out your Placidus, get with the book, and the self-discovery, the compassion for myself. I mean, it's been wild.
Well, the other thing is a good friend of mine went with her husband for a weekend away, and they did it together all weekend, and it blew their mind. They got so much closer. They found out so much about each other. So there's many ways I hope this book is used in families, in coworkers, in romances, and friendships.
So I just had to get that. I had to get that out of the way, and I have way more gushing to do, but we'll get to the part to help everybody who's tuning in. So I kind of actually want to back up because we're all over your astrology right now, but I want to hear a little bit more about your psychology practice, which was more than 20 years, right?
I started studying psychology at the same time I started studying astrology at 19. And I got my MA when I was my master's degree when I was about 23 or 24. And I became licensed as a marriage family therapist at that time. And I practiced as a marriage family therapist until 4 years ago. So for 40 years. And as a marriage family therapist, I studied anything and everything I could get my hands on until I also got my PhD in psychology. And what I ended up loving the most in my studies and what I found the most helpful is EMDR, trauma therapy, that I became a national consultant of that, which takes many years. And then also social and emotional education. How do you manage your emotions? Are you self-aware? Are you socially aware? Do you know how to have healthy relationships? And are you personally accountable and responsible? Randy, my partner, and I, through our nonprofit, trained hundreds of teachers, parents, and thousands of teens in social and emotional education.
And I just want to give a shout out to AHA, your organization. I have met students of yours that were, self-described as troubled teens, troubled queer teens that went through that program and, as healthy, expanded adults really still look back on that. So that's
Thank you. And I want to be clear, because this is so important, that AHA is in Santa Barbara, ahasb.org, and we serve every year thousands of teens, and they can be troubled or they can be described as absolutely fabulous and not having any troubles, because our model is everyone has to learn these they actually have to come together, and as a community everyone has to learn social and emotional skills, not just people that are in pain.
Well, this was my friend was really self-described as troubled. We actually ran into you while walking.
Oh,
She was like, "Oh no." I was like, "Come on."
I don't think of
Get
her
back
that way
to
at
your
all.
adult self. Get back into your adult self.
I know who you're talking about, and that's not how I recall her at all. I thought, oh,
Isn't that funny?
there's
Isn't
one
it
of the
funny
brightest
how we
women I
do?
ever met, right? That's how I thought of her.
Yeah. No, but it is funny how we I have it too, you know, how you think of yourself as a teen, as a troubled child, and really have such shame and stuff around it. Anyway, so what I want, so you were in this psychology practice. I'm dying to know, what kind of patterns did you start to see, whether it was with couples or people? I mean, I know we can't get into the exhaustive list and all of that time, but like if you were to just give us, hey, the top few things that really stuck out with the elements.
With the elements?
Yeah, so these patterns that you
Oh,
started
okay.
to
Well,
see
let
with
me put it to you
elements
this way,
and
and then we could break it down. So my practice as a therapist mostly involved seeing women, teenagers, and couples. For women over 40 years, the predominant issue always came down to women self-doubt, women's trauma, convincing them that they were not entitled or worthy of love and power. That's a pattern. Couples, unbelievable to me. I would sit there time and time again and think, how did we all grow up thinking solving problems means blaming you? I got to a point in seeing couples that unless the people came in saying, here's how I'm contributing to the hardship in this couple, I wouldn't want to see them. Because if all you want to do is come in and say, this is what's wrong with you and I blame you, there is no solving that. None. The only power any of us have is to change how we are in that situation. So the big thing in couples was I just got tired of the lack of accountability. That was really a big issue. With teenagers, most always it was the oppression from the parents. One or another parent was so terribly narcissistic, traumatized, addicted, or wounded that the teenagers were trying to unbury themselves from the baggage of one or both of their parents. They themselves were just precious humans that I saw that were just constantly having to shovel through parental conflict or parental dysfunction.
Yeah. And did the astrologer in you start to categorize things?
Well, this is how I did my practice all those years. Very few people knew that I was an astrologer when they would come to see me as a therapist, but some did. They would ask for their charts to be done. With everybody else, I just said, what's your birthday? And I would look at the chart just to give me a tool, a help in understanding, is this an acute issue? Is this a lifelong pattern? How could I be most of service? Because astrology can diagnose very well what's happening now through a transit or cycle, or what is from the birth, the pattern insipid in this chart. And it was very helpful to have the astrology to understand how I could be most effective in the treatment of this individual couple or family.
So I am just in my Placidus party phase, thanks to you.
Yeah.
I've never really, yeah, you really gave me the time to sit down, organize it, like finally do it, just get into all of those places. So I am loving that. But typically, you know, we go around and everybody at a party wants to know at this point, what's your sun, moon, and rising? And so can you explain to us, in that sun, moon, and rising, what is your innermost self, how you see yourself, you alone with you? what is the part of you that can be found on the internet or social media? And what is the part of you that your closest family and friends would describe you as?
Well, those are great questions, Amanda. You're so smart. The innermost you is your moon sign. So whatever sign your moon is in describes when you're alone with you, what are your non-negotiable needs? How are you emotionally organized? How were you nurtured? How will you nurture yourself and others? That's the moon. The public persona is the rising sign. So the rising sign describes how people first encounter you. What is the impression you give off? And that's the first house or the first chapter of my book, A Map to Your Soul. The sun sign is your basic ego identity. I am this. And so I don't know if your family or whomever would know you mostly like that, but it's a very strong, think of it like sunlight. It's the thing that lights up the rest of your personality, is this basic egoic identity. For example, we can do both of us. I'm an Aquarius. My basic identity is a humanitarian. My basic identity is a visionary. That's my Aquarius. What would you say your basic identity is?
I really don't know what my basic identity is.
Okay. But remind everybody your birthday. Do you want to disclose?
Oh, yeah. So I am Aries with an Aquarian moon and Scorpio rising. And we have
your basic identity is a badass.
I wouldn't say that, but I'll take it.
No, listen, Aries, we have a few friends that are Aries, but Aries is ruled by Mars. And for a woman, it is the one sun sign that says, I am going to be a pioneer. I am going to break the ceilings. I am not going to go along with the conforming rules that would make me less. It's a very, very action hero figure sun sign. And that's how I see you.
But you don't see me as Scorpio rising?
Oh,
yes.
Is
that our argument?
Oh, totally.
Because that's the
Scorpio rising is when I sit with you at breakfast and first meet you. It's the penetrating, extremely emotional, very feeling, very intense engagement. That's Scorpio rising. That's not your identity. That's your social style. Your identity is you're the owner of a freaking company. You broke so many rules in calling it moon juice. You're giving products that are breaking grounds everywhere. That's Aries, not Scorpio.
Got it.
Scorpio would want to hide. And I know you want to do that too.
So then the sun sign is what comes out, let's say, on
as the basic identity. It doesn't mean it's what I meet when I meet you, but if you look at the course of a lifetime, Aquarius, everything I've done has been to benefit humanity and groups. That's my basic identity. Right. Aries, everything you've done is to be a pioneer, a brave, courageous change maker on the planet. Look at your whole life. So that's the basic identity, is the sun sign, which everyone throws around like, you're this, you're this. Well, that's only one part of you. Because then you have your moon sign, that's your innermost needs. You have your rising sign, the social strategy or persona. Then you have your Mercury, how you communicate and listen. You have Venus, what are your values? How do you attract people? You have Mars, how do you get it done? You have Jupiter. You're in Taurus. Yes. Which thank God they threw me some earth. Yes. And so you get things done very sensually and beautifully, and you wear lovely clothes and love art and, stuff like that. That's how you get it done. Jupiter is about how you travel in abundance and what your philosophy of life is. Saturn is so important. People underestimate this all the time. It's how you actually discipline yourself and others. Mm-hmm. Uranus is how you create change. Neptune is how you dream and how you manifest dreams. And Pluto is how you transform. Mm-hmm. So the chart has many parts to it, and people sell themselves short when they go, I'm a this, and stop there. I know, at least we've evolved to sun, moon, and rising, but really like going through your Placidus party, I'm now, it's like
Sun, moon, and rising is never going to cut it for me again.
It's a great start, though. If you just have that, you know a lot about people. Like, again, I'm going to reveal myself for your people to understand. Aquarius, humanist, but I have a Taurus moon. I'm greedy and needy. You know, emotionally, ask my partner, ask my friends, greedy, needy. Sagittarius rising, I'm super positive and exuberant and exhausting. You know, so that's how you do it.
I have to share a little story. When Jennifer and I, when we first met, within minutes, you just looked at me and you said, whoa, you are so trippy. And you completely guessed my sun, moon, and rising. You knew that my birthday was coming up.
Yeah.
And so you knew what my sun was, but you guessed the rest. It was wild.
Well, I think you're very transparent, which is a compliment. You're very evolved, so you're not like trying to fool anybody at all, which I love about you. And so I'm not always a good guesser, but I knew the Scorpio rising because there's nothing quite like there's nothing quite like that. I mean, you just
hadn't even talked.
But it's a presence. If you have an evolved Scorpio rising, there is no one on the planet that is more present and seen into your soul. So that's how you are.
Well, I was wildly impressed. So I want to jump into something you talk about in the third house, and we're going to jump around the houses a little bit. And I capped myself at the 10th house, but I kind of want to just jump to the third because you really talk about something. And I think as a psychologist, you can really bring this, and it is my favorite thing. And I really think it is the one thing that could change the world. And you talk a lot. Well, first I want to preface with, you say everyone wants to be heard and not judged, but that's not the way our minds work.
No.
Everyone is being judged all the time. And so you talk about what we really want is we want deep and true listening. And I want you to talk to us about deep and true listening. I think first, just as a psychologist, like, just teach us how to deeply, truly listen and the importance of it. And then maybe you can give us, and then my favorite part was through the elements, how we think we are good listeners and we are not listening at all. And we could talk for 3 weeks about just that. But that feels so important to get out there.
Well, I love that you've really gotten into this book. You could teach it yourself at this point. I think what I've noticed over 40 years is most of us do not listen, and yet we would describe ourselves as great communicators. Listening basically involves 3 things: curiosity, patience, and presence. What we do instead of that, if you're very fiery, is you interrupt, you problem solve, you hijack the conversation. If you're watery, you overly invest emotionally, move into the emotional space of the other, and get completely mushed up in the conversation and are no longer listening, but feeling way too much. If you're an air sign or, air element, instead of listening, you might be distracting and funny and disassociated, or even like toxic positivity, blah, blah, blah. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this, but you're not listening. And then if you're earth, you could get into, judging and fixing and trying to make it more mechanical and break it down. But none of that's listening, but we do all those things. But what I've noticed, and I've really experimented, if you take away all those elemental not helpful strategies and you just get grounded, earth, air, you're open, fire, you're present and engaged, and water, you're compassionate, and you simply ask good questions and listen. This is a fact. Randy and I do this all the time as an experiment. We have gone to hundreds of occasions in which people talked nonstop and never asked us one question. At first, we were offended, but then we realized no one's ever listened to. They can't get enough of it. I mean, honestly, most people are never listened to. So once somebody actually starts listening, and then there's this, and I forgot to tell you this, and this is how I feel about this, and because listening is that powerful.
I think actually, and you can weigh in, and I don't know why I'm getting dating tips right now, because I don't think that's necessarily the community, and it's not something I've ever thought about, and like never dated myself. But I'm just getting this hit of this is actually a really potent. I do hear from people that they're on the apps and it's all this, and everybody, in LA and New York is so hot, and how can they compete? They're in like all of this. And I just want to say that this would probably be the most attractive, most potent thing you could bring to your digital dating life, is when you do meet someone, get into Jennifer's little recipe for listening, because I don't think anybody else is doing that out there.
I can promise you that the sexiest thing alive when you're getting to know somebody is being seen and celebrated through great listening. And this is another thing I've learned, is so many people are looking for love, but if they were really to do an inventory on themselves, how much love are they putting out into the world? And that isn't transactional. There's so much that we mix up as love when it's actually an agenda, and it's a goal, and it's a transaction. When I go about my day and just want to make people happy and feel good about themselves, by the end of the day, my cup is full. So there's this other piece, is if you truly listen to someone else. Like, we went to dinner with friends we hadn't seen the other night, and I hadn't seen them for a while. It was like the best of everything I haven't thought about for a long time, because they're both very interesting and very different than us. And I was just tripping on, if you really listen to people, everybody's fascinating.
Completely.
Even people I disagree with, by the way. Like, if you really listen.
Especially people you disagree with. I mean, I do this just on even social media, because I work a lot and have young kids, and so sometimes that's the conversation that I get to be in. But I make it this great practice of, in this polarized world, to make sure that you're getting like opposite ends of the poles, and that you don't have to like someone and you don't have to agree with them to learn from them. And like a great exercise to not be so triggered and need to shut things out.
Yes. So I'm going to give to you my newest theory. No one's heard it but Rendy. Ready?
Okay.
Here it is. Here it is. We're living in a moment that I would call fragilism, in which everybody's easily offended and takes incredible offense at most everything. And what we have to move to, instead of fragilism, is what it means to really be an advocate. And there's a big difference. So if I'm fragile because you've hurt my feelings and misgendered me, or you've been sexist, or what, millions of things, and I respond with like, you're out of my life, I won't have anything to do with you, you clearly don't get it. Well, I have now lost all my advocacy. Because in order for the world to change, instead of me being fragile and reactive, I need to bring you in to understand why this is important in terms of policy and future. And I'm so interested in this, because when you can't even have a conversation because there's so much correctness at stake, you're no longer advocating for anything. You're just confirming bias. That's it.
Well, and I think that as you're saying this, I'm realizing advocacy it's hard work. It's uncomfortable. Yes. And it's being in the apps, and you kind of got to get in it with people that you think are perhaps bigots. You got to hang out with the bigots.
Well, listen, my whole life has been advocacy, and I can tell you it is very hard work. The alternative is the end of this planet as we know it, as we combust. So for me, I've got to always check myself. Am I really making a point, or am I defending my position to the point of extinction?
And going back to those listening skills.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think that takes bravery. And I think you're showing us right now, whether it's, the sometimes the bravery that I need to call in to be really, let's say, really triggered by my partner, really upset, really triggered, feeling like a child, feeling like all of these things. And then I say to myself, okay, I mean, it's like going on a roller coaster, you kind of like strap yourself in and you're like, okay, we're going to do it. And you're going to be safe. You're not going to fall off the machine and die. And so it's kind of like that when I'm going to do.
That's a great metaphor that I'm going to borrow. You just
So
said the most apt metaphor for what it's like to be activated in old issues. You're on a roller coaster, but you are strapped in, and we forget we're strapped in. We think we're going to go flying off, and some of us do fly off because we forget to strap ourselves in. But it's really true. When I'm activated, I know, and this is also science, the minute you're activated, your reptilian brain goes on and your neocortex goes off. So all you've got available to you is fight, flight, freeze, or faint. And when you're in that mode, all you can do is hang on until you're out of that mode, and best not to speak.
And if you can, listen. If two people are activated, if you can, that's my practice for myself. It comes up really only in my marriage at this point, sometimes in parenting, when somebody's throwing an active tantrum, is to not solve, to not shoo it away, but to really listen. It's actually, I mean, it's a fun thing.
Well, we would think it's fun. People that are really watery, they might not think it's so fun because they get overwhelmed. But I do want to say at this point, because you're making such a good point about marriage and long-term relationships, it's very natural and normal to get activated. I think we've made up this myth that if you're happy, you get along all the time and you don't get activated. And I, 26 years into my thing, how long are you guys together? Not as long, but.
Not as long.
Yeah. But here's the bottom line. If you really are in love with somebody, it will bring up everything unlike love.
Everything.
And if you're really committed, you will work on healing that together. But I don't want people to think it's a failure after the big lust and courtship to have issues.
We're going to hop around my notes.
Okay, good.
Now we're hopping into the 4th house. And yes, this is something I really want you to do. And this felt as potent to me as the deep and true listening is, please walk us through the 8 stages of relationship. And I just, if you can get to Jennifer's book, read her, where she really, thank you, as somebody who's been in a 26-year relationship, you dispel this, in one part, you're really dispelling the lust. And I want to talk about, and we'll get there later a little bit, into the 8th house and sexuality. And I have a feeling that on your book tour, you've probably been asked a lot, like, how do we have good sex through each sign? You get whole sexuality, which I really want you to break that down. But right now, I really want you to go through the 8 stages of relationship as an elder, as a mentor, as somebody in a very vibrant, sexy. I mean, I've hung out with you and your partner, and it is real and it is spicy. And so, coming from you, walk us through these 8 stages.
So this is the 5th house, and I broke this down into the stages that are very reliable if you really want to be intimate, and they're unavoidable. So stage 1 is fire, and that's that longing and lust. And you really feel like your whole metabolism and chemistry has changed. And you are like got a pep in your step, and you wake up alive and you can't wait to talk and all of that stuff. And then the next stage is earth, because you're going to do anything and everything to improve your self-image to be attractive to this person. This is the part I wish I had on an every other month basis, you know, where you're eating better and you're exercising and you dress up and I have the best underwear ever. I mean, you know, like that stage is so fun because it's all about basically becoming the god or goddess you wish you always were, but you have the inspiration because you want to look really good and it's very earthy. Stage 3 is what we call water, when you start really feeling and being vulnerable and feeling the love connection and merging with each other. And probably that involves sex. And it's just this very deep, intimate gesture of communion. And then after a time, and this happens no matter who you are, doubts and insecurities creep in, and that's air. Because you come out of all this luscious bonding and chemistry into, wait a second, who are we? Do I really know you? Do you really know me? What if you don't like me as much as I like you? I mean, all the stuff comes in. We all do it. And it's really a test at this point. How much of these insecurities can you share and feel reassured instead of judged? Because everybody's got the insecurities, but will they voice them? And if you can get through the
listen, right? This is like going back to our listening. Will you listen?
Yes.
If your partner brings them up?
Yes. And so then once you've kind of solved for the insecurities, or you can admit you have them and you both can share them and you both have ways to reassure, but not, you know, be codependent, but just go, I've got you, you know, we're together, we've made these agreements, the agreements hold, all of that. Then you're going to inevitably, and this can take years, but you're inevitably going to get to a place where you have conflicts. Out of the merged bliss of like, we've got each other and everything's cool. And then inevitably, because we're human, we're going to come into different needs, wants, and desires. It's not going to all be running like a clock. And oh my God, you want more time with that person. And I don't really like being with that person. And oh, you want to get up at 5:30 a.m. That's me. And my partner does not want me to get up at 5:30. It wakes her up. She wants to sleep until 7. I mean, these things freaking happen. Conflict is literally like a spark that if you lean into it and get curious, it's very passionate and not a problem, but you can't push the conflict down and try to be the same because it will put the fuse out. The fire will go out. So there's the conflict. Then stage 6, return to earth, getting real and doing the work. This is when you have to say, we've been through a lot. We really care about each other. What does it mean for us to be committed? What are our values? How are we going to ground this into reality? What are our goals for this couple, not just for each other? And you really get into the earth. And then if you make it through that, the next air chapter is explicitly planning a future together. You know, whether it be, I want to have children with you, or I don't want to have children with you, or I want to live as many people do now, not with you, but be committed. Or I want a throuple, which I can't even believe that's on the table right now, but for a lot of people it is.
So many.
It is. Yeah. And I tried that when I was younger and I thought, Jesus, I don't have the time or energy to do this much relating. But anyway, people are into whatever they're into. That's when you make the plan for the future. You get in your mindset with each other and you make a plan, and it becomes this guidepost for really being in relationship committed. And then you return to water, which is if you've been like me through 26 years or even 10 or 7, inevitably, you're going to hurt each other. You're going to disappoint each other. You're going to have a lot of big things happen. Parental deaths, just all kinds of things happen because we're human. And if you really are intentional and go through that with awareness and with kindness, there's going to be forgiving, there's going to be mercy, there's going to be compassion. And then you really, truly, and this is where I feel like I am at this point with my partner, you really are in love with this person because you've been through everything. And I'm sure we'll go through more, but we've been through so much together. And I look across the room and go, you're my person. And not because you meet my every need, but because you love me, I love you, I trust you, we have it together. It's quite an extraordinary journey. It's not for the faint-hearted. A lot of people give up at any one of those points.
Yes.
Especially the forgiveness thing. I can't believe Esther Perel talks about this, how often people would rather get rid of a relationship than do the hardest work, which is accepting somebody's humanity and working through it with them.
And it's hard, you know. You just don't know how hard it is until you're right there and you can observe yourself sitting in a chair acting like a baby. I mean, that's really hard. Yourself like, this is ridiculous. It's like those dreams where you're walking and you can't get the key in the door. I mean, I liken it to that. It's like, but you know, it's like the struggle to like, oh, pull your higher self down and really like, I'm sorry.
Listen, the hardest part for me, because I'm basically a love addict, is this. When you're in the beginning, you basically can do no wrong. You're hot, everything's working, you're the goddess, they're the god, whatever the deal is, it's like you're so idealized. And then the worst part is, by the time you're way into a relationship, you're not that person anymore, to yourself or to the other person. And it's like, oh, that's so disappointing. Remember when you used to look at me like I was the sun, the moon, and the stars? Can you do that again, even though I'm not dressing well, I'm swearing, and I'm leaving shit all around the house?
Now, what part of the chart is that? Because I would say I have that too. And I would say even worse than the partner not looking at you like that all the time is what you just said, not feeling that way about yourself. You become bored with yourself.
I think that's the whole issue. That's not a chart issue. That's the psychology issue. We all of us crave a kind of idealized mirroring. Every single human wants to be seen at their best. That's very intoxicating. And it's hard work to bring that gaze to ourselves. Very hard work to do it. And that's what I work on every day. And I have a hack for that. So I'm going to tell you all that. You know, when I was busy wanting to see myself that way from ego to ego, like Jennifer looking at Jennifer, it was always impossible. But every morning I write these letters to the divine of my knowing, and I thank them for all the things from the day before. And I write like a love letter to the divine of my knowing, which for anybody, it just means anything that's bigger and better and higher noble than your ego self. So it's like, could be nature, it could be anything. For me, it's just the great beyond. And then I write them that. I write this love letter. And then I ask them for things. Please, today with Amanda, let's have miracles, blessings, and magic, and like a real synergy. Or I ask them for things. Mm-hmm. Them being a loose word, it's just energy. And that has been the most helpful thing for me to fall in love with myself, but not small Jennifer, but just like the energy of Jennifer, which isn't personal to me. I consider myself a vessel. And that has cleared up a lot of the self-esteem stuff. Because I think when you're working hard to like, I want to like my body better. I want to like my personality better. You know, that's kind of where we're all starting out. That's too big an ask because the world's against all that. The world's going to tell you every second, you're too old, your hair's gross, your boobs are falling. You know, it's like, I'm a loser in terms of the cultural narrative, a total loser. But in the spiritual narrative, I couldn't be more loved. And I think it's just a better route.
Okay, so what would your PhD say about, and so I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
I find it really easy to feel intoxicated with myself, really like on that high when I'm by myself.
Yes.
And that can even be years living by myself. Like I love to be alone. In partnership, in marriage, is it a time thing? Is it that I'm not spending enough?
Yeah. Well, you're a mom too. You've got a lot going on and working. I've noticed too, and this isn't true for a lot of people, Amanda, so I want to tell you this. It's true for you. It's true for me. When I'm in my own energy, I feel in love with myself. But I won't even say it's not even my energy. It's just unfiltered, radiant, divine energy.
Yes.
But when we are in personality, which is with another human, we get in personality. That's when things get tougher.
Or
See,
like we're monotonous and boring, and it just feels.
well, guess what's so tedious? Having a personality.
Yeah.
You know what they call enlightenment? No preferences. Imagine for a second if you were with your husband and you had no preferences of how he was, how you were, you'd be happy and radiant every minute. So would I. But I have a lot of preferences. Oh, I'd like it like this. I want you to look at me like this. I want to talk like this. I want, like, the mind is just this rat. So the whole idea is that when we're alone in our own radiant energy, there is no activation of our personality. So it's when we're with another human, we see their personality, we see our personality. And for people that are noble seekers, that gets very boring and tedious. Why do we have to be mired in all this?
Yeah.
I don't want to just get beyond it and like be in bliss.
Yeah. And is that air? Is that our Aquarius?
That's a very high air thing. It's also in the chart, it's called a Uranus thing. It's the part of us that resists and resents being human and wants to just be at the goddess or god level of consciousness where there is no friction. There's just blissful union. But I do believe it is my incarnation and yours that is about learning how to bring heaven on earth, which means plodding through this very slow, hard personality stuff to finally and for once be a personality that channels the divine with another human. It's a big call.
Yeah, I know. And I actually feel like this is pretty applicable to this community who's listening. People that I've never met, but we're like chatting in the DMs, and I'm getting the kinds of questions that they're asking and how they're thinking. And I actually think that will really speak to this community.
Yes, and now I had an insight. Moon juice. This is what we're all thirsting for, is the juice of the moon, which is the goddess mother, divine love for ourselves and others. The juice of that is the sukkar we're all starving for, is that ultimate self-love when we're with ourselves and when we're with another. Like if we really were in touch with that spigot of just divine love that just is all encompassing, drink, 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 drink. When we're with anybody, we'd be good. Moon juice.
I know, it is that, and that's the part where I can watch myself and it's like, oh, this is so pathetic. I wake up in the morning and I really do feel like I'm coming from that place, like a 5-minute drive by myself. It's just like,
Yes,
and the trees, and then I'm in ecstasy, and I'm like, I'm gonna bring this home. And I walk in the door, and it's like the demands and this, and my partner's not in the same mood, and like I immediately can't bring that. And then I'm in this kind of like pathetic little place in myself of just like,
well, that part I can help you with, because I used to be, and I mean this, totally thrown if my partner was in a bad mood. I would just go right there and no longer. But that took a lot of work, like to sustain your own glow in the mood of another person is very hard.
It's very hard.
I made it a commitment. Now, I didn't at this moment have kids raising. We did have 3. We were raising. I could never do it then. But now they're out of the house. They're adults. And now if my partner's in a really bad mood, I see that. Okay, or they're not interested in me, or they're preoccupied, whatever the issues are. Then I say, I'm my own joy. And then I just hold the boundary. And I actually been able to do it. And it's a worthy chore, because it's very hard to go down with the ship. It doesn't help anybody.
No, I don't think you can do long-term partnership if you can't have that boundary and hold your joy.
Well, it's a struggle. For me, it was a big struggle. And because I think, especially as women, we mix up empathy with sympathy. Sympathetic energy is when you join the other person's energy. Objective empathy is when you see it, you have compassion for it, but you actually do not cross over.
Okay. We're getting a lot of, I'm thinking of it as like an exercise routine that you're giving us. So we're all going to have our little mat activities. We're going to do listening. We're going
Yeah.
to into our own joy. Okay, now I'm taking us back to the second house.
Okay.
I think that you have a unique process around manifestation.
Oh, yeah.
So will you, I mean, just give us your thoughts and feelings around manifestation, which I know is like so
Okay. Well,
out.
number one, I was brought up in the era of every single person selling me a way to manifest a partner, to manifest a house, to manifest the next golden thing.
I
And
feel
it
like
never,
having a revolution, you know, there was like that,
oh, the secret, the everything.
even,
And
you know, the 90s
yeah,
manifestation.
yeah, I learned all of it. I learned of all of it, but it didn't sit well with me.
Mhm.
And the reason being, there was a big piece missing. On behalf of who? Who am I manifesting this for?
Mhm.
And my fervent belief is if you're only manifesting this for your own little self satisfaction, it's not really in alignment with the divine.
Mhm.
So let's just start right here. When I'm manifesting, it's going to be, and it has been, on behalf of myself and others. There's always the others, not just the me. And getting very clear, that's the beginning step. So, for example, if you want to manifest 2,000 more customers next month, on behalf of who? Will it be on behalf of your employees, on behalf of the people that use the beautiful stuff that you sell? It will be on behalf of you. But it's like, get very clear that manifestation at its best has to include goodness and well-being for others. Then for me, it's getting in touch with the desire for whatever that is, coupled with the effort it requires. So a lot of people that I've spoken to are wanting to manifest something without really being willing to do the effort part. So effort is a huge part of manifestation. It's like you're making a casting call. I would like this. But what would it be like if you never showed up to interview anybody, or you didn't write the ad, or you know, like energy meets energy. So for me, manifesting is a very physical, practical thing of set the guidelines, enroll people. It's not going to be only you that makes this happen, and do the work faithfully every day, no matter what the results.
Yeah.
Every day, no matter what the results. Because if it's only transactional, I'll do this, God, if you give me this or whatever, that's very, very primitive. But if you say, I'm faithful to this because it will help me and others, and you keep doing it joyfully with a maximum effort, my experience is I might not always have the exact thing. I've always been amazingly satisfied. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
And I, you know, I like how you talk about the things that you wanted to manifest at some point in life. You know, you stayed the course and you've evolved to a place of you didn't actually ever need those little things that you'd never want now, and that you were taken to another place.
Well, the other thing that's been, you know, again, being older is always great because you get this long view. I've had 2 Capricorn friends who wanted these exact things at these exact times in their life. Like they had a very clear vision. They both got every single thing and then went into the deepest depressions of their life. Both of them. Why? Because it's not getting what we want that makes us happy. It's the process of being in joy around attracting goodness to you and others. So it's the end game is actually a misnomer. It's not what makes us happy. I have another.
Also, I feel like you've got the unique position of being a psychologist who has worked with billionaires and you've done pro bono work, and you talk about well, you know, and this is like a bumper sticker. This is not new information, but I feel like actually, you know, a good reminder for people to hear what you've seen in that, and that the material manifestations are not actually what
Right. Well, they've done studies on this. Once you have food, shelter, and a few extra bucks to do some recreational stuff, there's no correlation with increased happiness with more and more and more. In fact, a lot of the billionaires I know, and I know quite a few, and millionaires and celebrities, their lives become extraordinarily complex. They're managing people, they're managing PR, they're managing like, and I just go, oh, I'm so happy I have one house, I have no servants. It's like, I actually feel like the luckiest person. I dodged somehow all this complexity, and I just have myself to take care of and my partner and our kids. It's an interesting thing that we have made this grandiose promise that if you have more attention, you're happier. And it's the farthest thing from the truth. You got a lot more to answer for. You got a lot more people pulling on you.
In those environments, do you feel like air? And then I want to clarify, when you said Capricorn, are we talking about someone's sun or
sun sign? These are two sun signs.
Okay, so we're not, because now you've got me obsessed with the Placidus, and so
I know, but we're talking to the most people understand sun signs, but these happen to be two people with sun signs in Capricorn. But there could have been Capricorn moons too, but thanks for clarifying that.
And so just last little bit on manifestation, because I do see so many people clamoring after, like, I'm dialing up a car from the universe. We wind up back here. What would you say, what is the shadow side in manifestation through the elements?
Okay.
Like, where could someone tell, like, hey, I'm having a healthy relationship to manifesting, and this is getting a little shadowy?
That's a great question, Amanda. I didn't write about that in the book, but so here's how I would break it down. If you are very fiery and you're in the shadow side of manifestation, and I've been like this because I have a lot of fire, it will be at anyone else's expense. You'll get what you want. That's the shadow of that. And I've done that. So I'm going to own that. Like where I got so obsessed with wanting something that it didn't matter whose backs I walked on to get it. That's so unhealthy. I've done that. If it's earth, you're so busy wanting this thing that you actually become more and more rigid and more stingy in the pursuit of the thing. So you get more and more like earth, cave-like, claustrophobic, defensive, because you're basically making a vault so no one else gets what you want. It's very, very like stingy and grabby. If it's air, and boy, we've seen a lot of this, you'll say anything to anyone to get what you want. You'll lie, you will seduce, you will just be unscrupulous in talking a game to anyone. This is why in Montecito, where we live, they have more per capita scams than anywhere.
Wow. Because
people are scamming. That's air. Like, I want this so much, I'll say anything. I'll like sell you anything. That's air. And then with water, and that's the feeling thing. If you got into the shadow of feeling, you would become incredibly emotionally manipulative to get what you want. So you'd hold people emotionally hostage, you'd blackmail people emotionally, you would, act out very threateningly and maybe even, threaten suicide or horrible things to get what you want. Emotional hostage taking.
This feels very potent and like something that I think you need to put out there.
Well, I just did vis-a-vis you, but gosh, I'd never really thought of it. And because this is part of your Aries thing, you really always push the envelope to a new thing. That is so important to really realize the shadow side of manifesting. And there are a lot of people teaching manifesting that have all four of these bad shadow sides.
Yeah.
Like the people that charge you, just saying, not going to say any names, I'm going to charge you $10,000 to come to 3 hours of my seminar, because if you spend this money, you'll be more invested and you will be guaranteed your manifestation. What crap?
Thank you for that, Jennifer. Thank you. So sixth sign,
The sixth house. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the sixth house. And this is not exactly how you put it, but I
Yeah.
think that you can fly and get us there, if you will. Stress in each element.
Oh,
So
yeah. Okay.
how
I
it's
can
gonna
talk about
come
that.
up, and then self-soothing.
Yeah, well, you're making basically a whole new book. Thank you very much. But anyway, you are this person. Basically, we all have positive and negative stress. If you think of stress in a good way as friction in your life that helps you either create or destruct. So we can use it either way, but stress under the elements, let's talk about this. For fire, you're burning yourself out. You're just too enthusiastic and too aggressive, and you're burning yourself out. For fire, the antidote to that, if you feel like you're just getting yourself so worked up and overdoing because you're so excited, that's me again. The best things to do are grounding and water. So grounding for me is go sit outside without any devices for a half an hour on the ground and pet my cats. That will help. Dancing, moving the energy, get out of the head, and then water. And I hardly ever want to do this, by the way, but take a bath and put in the lovely things in the bath.
Isn't it so interesting? Is that a fire thing? Because my fire, I never want to take a bath either. And every time I do, it's a good idea. But there's this like weird resistance to it.
I have a resistance. Me too. I think because it seems so pointless. Like, what are we doing? Where are we going? We're just sitting in water. But anyway, it's really good for me. And when I get really wound up, that's the best place to be, and the ground. Okay, now if it's earth, usually that stress shows up as symptoms in the body, like, oh, my neck hurts, oh, my wrist hurts, oh, I've got a tummy ache. Earth, it's the body. If you find yourself having a lot of symptoms, you're probably not moving enough. For earth, they've got to move more. So for me, and this is me, I had to learn this too. It took a long time. I never miss a day of exercise, not one day ever, unless I'm sick in bed. And I make it moderate, like 30 minutes to an hour. I don't need to like go be the winner. But I think for earth people that get stuck in the stress, like they just sit all day, or they get like, I can't move. The only antidote is movement and drinking water. And using you've got a lot of good products that I use. By the way, I take this every day.
Is that super
For you? Yeah, I take it every day.
I think especially for fire signs.
Yeah.
I mean, or air, or I mean, all the elements.
Yeah, no, but I think when you're
people.
running high, super you. But when you're running low, which is earth, you're kind of stuck in the mud and you're getting fixed and rutted. Movement, water, that stuff. Okay. Then if it's air, way too much mind. My Qigong teacher calls it wind. You're just constantly up here. Where is even the body? You have no idea anymore where the body is. Like, so it's all up here. And the stress is worrying and obsessing. Yeah, I have a few friends that are just constantly in the wind, like a complete windmill of overactivity. The only thing for them to do is long walks, don't listen to anything, pay attention in nature, massage, like do anything and everything to slow everything down and consciously move the energy into the pelvis, into the legs, because it's basically like everything got caught up in here. And then water is when, and this is real tough, and this is my partner and some other people I love the most, when they just get caught in a river of feeling and they cannot get out. It's like as if you literally fell into a river and you can't find the sides. You actually need to have a practice of therapy or talking to someone where you say what those feelings are. You have to name them to tame them. You have to actually make things like food with your hands. Do something. Don't just wallow. So you got to actually make things, do things, build things with people. The hands become really important when the feelings are drowning you.
I like the cooking. I think that's a good tip for watery friends.
Yeah, because it's the last thing you feel like doing when you're drowning is anything, basically. And feelings are very convincing. When people that are very watery or in bad feelings, those feelings will tell you you're in this forever and you're never getting out. They do tell you that. So you have to counter that with, I'm making a salad. I'm making cornbread.
This pie, this like emotional pie that Randy might make with like all of her feelings in the pie. Okay, thank you for that. Can we go to the seventh house?
Yes.
Um, because I want you to give us a new love language. I'm so tired of acts of service, gifts. I mean, that is like, I'm just
Well,
so
it is the love language, but what I talk about in the seventh house in this
I feel
book.
like you have a better way. I'm so tired of acts of service and gifts. I mean, gifts are in there, but you do.
Yeah. No, I broke it down into a support language. So that's what I call it. And actually, friends of mine have done this at their work environments where everybody goes around and names their support languages. And it's vastly increased productivity because people are getting each other better. So really briefly, for fire, it's show me, don't tell me. It's big demonstrations, like, bring in the balloons, sing me the songs, all of that. Definitely be your word, be authentic and honest. Don't bullshit me, be direct. For earth, it is do the chores. Don't make me ask. It is give me supplies and things I need to get shit done. It is be calm, patient, and accepting. Don't rush me ever. Just be there. And then be consistent. When you say you're going to do it, do it. For air, it's regularly speak words of affirmation, send texts, reminders, how much you love me, just really be present with the words. Be always curious what I'm up to. When I'm really upset, instead of trying to talk me out of it, just breathe. And be willing to disagree, like really disagree, but don't be like punitive or reactive about our disagreement. For water, it's literally host my feelings without fixing me. Just host them. Listen, host them. Don't try to make them any different. Be empathetic and compassionate, and don't have anything else going on when you spend time with me, like looking at the door, looking at your phone. Just be very much with me, like I'm all that matters. And even when I'm in a dark place, trust that I'm going to be okay. Hold that light. Like, you're feeling horrible. I know you'll get through it. That's basically a rundown of the support languages through the elements.
Thank you for that. I think I'm hanging on that, like, ooh, yeah, listen to my dark feelings and just love me for them. Don't try to fix me.
That's a really helpful one for most everyone. There's nothing worse than being in a really hard place. And the minute someone starts listening to you, they see you as a problem to be solved.
Yes.
There's something so insulting about that.
Yes.
Basically, when we're in a really hard place, the only and everything we need is, wow, that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if that is a childhood wound. If you have a parent that did that to you, I feel like as an adult, that wounded child is still in there. And every time you have a big feeling, if anyone tries to correct you, bring the toxic positive, anything like that, that will activate you. Okay, so I told you in the beginning, I have a feeling on your book tour circuit, everybody wants the sex hacks through the elements. And so we're going to let people go find those sex hacks if they really.
Yes, please, because honestly, you're right. That's the thing that's the go-to. Tell us the sex and I'm happy in the book. I really got into it. But I
Yeah.
think people should read the book.
People should read the book and they should get into that. But I just want to hear you before we get into, I've got a big question for you about 2023, because people
Okay,
are
good.
going to hear this in the first week of January. And then I've got a lightning round for you
Okay,
of just
good.
questions. But I just want to hear you talk about the subtle sexual field.
Okay, well, this happened because, I've always been very sexual and adventurous and everything, but every movie I ever saw that was showing hot sex was a man picking up a woman and throwing her on the wall and penetrating her. And I thought, one day I said to Randy, did you like that? Is that what I like? Like, who likes this? And then I started interviewing a lot of my friends that are straight, or even the gay guys or whatever, and I said, is this what you're all up to? Like I just wanted a reference. And basically, there are a few people that's their go-to. Throw me on the kitchen table, throw me up against the wall. But then there's like most people can't throw people. They don't have that physical stamina, or their backs are hurt or whatever. A lot of people don't want to be thrown and don't want to have a penetration on a rough surface. I mean, I just got into, so what is this all about? And basically, that picture, which dominates most movies, is a fire sex act, like furious and hot and passionate and athletic and very fast. Like also people are coming in 5 seconds, that's the way that goes. So the way I constructed the sex chapter was based on, there's a lot of other ways for us to be turned on. And this is 40 years of counseling women predominantly. Most women want the courtship starting at the moment they wake up in order to want sex later. And that's called the subtle sexual field. That's the glances, that's the sweet compliments, that's the helping with whatever the help needs to be, that's the touching of the hair or the holding hands, or let's look at this beautiful erotic movie together. There's 100 different ways to create the subtle sexual field so that by the time you're doing an actual genital, act, everything up into that is the courtship and the seduction. That's called the subtle sexual field. And what I've noticed, if people want a lot more sex, start the sexual subtle field in the morning. By the time you get to whatever time it is, most people are going to be really eager if they've had all that kind of attention.
And what are ways that people wanting more of this, how can they ask their partner for it without asking them on the nose? Because sometimes I think even though it's recommended, ask for what you want, I have found that can really make people feel angry,
defensive and inadequate. So the way that I would do it, and of course we've had to do it in our relationship because, a sex life over so many years takes a lot of effort. But here's what I would say. When you're not in bed, when you're out to dinner, get away from the house, choose a night, choose an afternoon. Don't do it when you're high because you'll forget what the heck you even talked about. No, I mean that. And just say, what are 10 ways I can be more seductive for you? And what are 10 ways you could be more seductive for me? Because let me emphasize that everyone that's in a pretty good relationship would like to have more intimacy. Not everyone wants sex, but they want more intimacy. And so intimacy is based on these subtle, pervasive actions through a day. It rarely happens when you've been kind of cruddy to each other all day, but now let's have sex.
But now throw me up against the wall.
Yeah. No, I mean, but I think partners have to look at this as a joint effort. But you've got to find out, what are your 10 ways I could be more seductive? What are 10 ways you could be more seductive for me? Because you both have that exact same goal, more intimacy. And so it's not like you should do this. It's what can we both do to bring in that chemistry that we both benefit from.
Like this, it feels like a sexy joint project as opposed to, and I don't know why, but so many people recommend you got to ask for what you want. And I just feel the way that it's thrown out there like that, it doesn't actually work. I mean, I don't know who it's working for.
Well,
but...
I wouldn't say, I can say only in my relationship that wouldn't go down well, because it would be felt as blaming.
Yeah.
But if we say both of us want more intimacy, let's talk about how we get there. That's a pretty cool conversation.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for that. Okay, so, and then you also had this Mercury retrograde appreciation meditation. Do you want to just quickly give us that? Because I feel like that's
You're like making me do the whole book in one interview.
I know,
Okay,
I'm making you work.
Mercury retrograde is basically happens a few times a year. The only thing I would say about it right now is it is the best time to realize everyone's going too fast. Everyone's expecting God and the machines. And during Mercury retrograde, we all get a new time to go slower, reflect. And my rule is look at everything 3 times before sending, because Mercury is about, in retrograde, being more thoughtful and more conscientious.
Okay. New moon. Are you in?
I'm super, I write poems for the new moon. One day I'll share them with you, Amanda. The new moon's such a beautiful time because we have this cycle in nature that every single month we have what's called a dark, dark moon where we start over again. So the new moon is literally when you concede your life anew. It's just a beautiful moment. So it happens every month. If you pay attention, you can like go, okay, we're starting again. How do I want it to be?
It's been an incredible way to track too. If you write them down over the months and years, you can see that progression. Do you have any wisdom for us around 2023? Talk to us. I don't know anybody that has had an easy 2022.
Yes. Well, 2022 is one of the most conflictual years. Very, very hard on all of us and the economy. And it's meant to be because we've got to realign our values. I feel extremely hopeful that we had democracy. I think this is like the best outcome that could have happened. We actually have a variety of leadership now, and people were represented, and it wasn't one way or the other. I think that's extremely important for where we're going. And 2023 is a much more stable year, but it also comes with major consequences environmentally. And so we're going to all be having to figure out, like we have with the pandemic, new ways to address climate crisis. This will be huge in 2023. And I'm hopeful that if we bring the same amount of attention as we did to getting vaccines for billions of dollars to climate solutions, we can be extremely effective. The other thing about 2023, which is enormous, is we go out of Pluto in Capricorn into Pluto in Aquarius. Last time was 1778 through 1798, the French and American Revolution. So what we want to concentrate on, and what I'm committed to, I'm writing an article about it right now, is my 11th chapter called Your Sacred Crew. Everyone has to define who's in the lifeboat with them and what their contracts are, and then connect with other sacred crews or lifeboats to create a future where everybody feels positive, contributing, and part of a conversation. And so we need to really focus heavily with Pluto and Aquarius on the upside of Pluto and Aquarius, which is who's my ride and die friends and family and coworkers, and what does that even mean? And I will share with you, and you can share with your crowd, sacred crew agreements that I wrote up for myself, but they'll be helpful.
Yes, please. We will send those out. You can get them to me and we'll send them out so somebody can listen to this and get in. Okay, here are community questions. I distilled them down because I knew we were going to talk for a while. We got a bunch of Scorpio rising questions. but I'm going to go with this one. Staying authentic. And you actually talk about this in your book. And the question came from a woman who read your book and is also Scorpio rising. And if you can come off as too negative or a downer. And she's asking, how does she stay authentic, but not come off as a downer?
Great question. Number one, she gets bonus points for self-awareness.
Well, she is also a psychologist.
Okay, she's big on self-awareness. I think the power of Scorpio rising, and you have it, is to be really engaged and to absolutely believe the best of every situation, even if there's hardship in it. So instead of going that Scorpio stinger way of like, this is horrible and it's going to end horrible, like, here's my fear, because Scorpio rising will be cautionary and fearful. Here's my fear, and here's what I'd like to see. Because I think what Scorpio rising defaults in sometimes is here's my fear, here's my caution, and forgets here's what I'd like to see. Because that's the transformative power of Scorpio rising, is if you believe in it, Amanda, it could happen.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my answer.
I love my Scorpio rising more than anything in my chart. I love it.
Because it's powerful.
I love it. Okay, from a Sag, how to stay content as she's always wanting to travel.
My best friend named Jan Fadden has a Sag moon. And my friend today said, where's Jan going? Is she going to Japan? I go, no, it's Vietnam. She travels more than anyone I know. That's hard. You know, I have Sag rising. And when I went on a 10-day silent retreat where I didn't speak and did just meditation for 10 days, I thought I would die because it's so still. Instead, I realized the ultimate travel is the spiritual inward travel, reframe travel. It can be inside or outside. You don't actually have to hop around the earth. I learned more in that 10-day meditation about life than I ever did traveling.
Loving these healthy lightning round tips from you. Okay, then we have a question, and I believe it's called astrocartography.
Yes, astrocartography.
Which I feel like I'd love to we could have a whole other session on your thoughts around that. But we have someone looking for relocation, what elements or planet lines for healing. How do you find that?
I will say I used to do this. It's quite complex. It's like going to an osteopath or something. You actually need to consult with an expert, which I'm no longer. So I would say go to the search engine, look up reviewed relocation astrology experts, and have a session.
Okay. What parts of the chart will say house represent the shadow self? And I know you've got to go. So
yeah, I've got to go in a minute. So I'm going to tell you, every single house can show you where your shadows might be, but the one that's going to show you the place you project the most, and I did write about this in my book, is the 7th house. So the house across from your ascendant, in this case, you'd have to know your accurate birth time, is going to tell you the qualities you most put on other people and don't know yourself. So in your case, you do have a lot of Taurus anyway, but yours would be Taurus. And the shadow sides of Taurus are incredibly stuck, greedy people who are very withholding and very stubborn would be your shadow.
Stubborn and stuck sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. Because we always project those qualities out.
Okay, I have 10,000 more questions for you, but I will find you another time. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for this book. Thank you for your wisdom.
Well, I want to thank Moon Juice because one, I hardly use products, but I definitely use you and Sakara Life. And I really think that you're a genius in your formulations, and they're gentle and they work and they're positive and they're vibrational. So I'm very grateful to you, Amanda Pioneer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.